And all of a sudden, it wasn't like you need to change management. We found they were change makers. These people were screaming from rooftops saying, I want that solution, I want that tomorrow. I think every founder has to really buy into the fact that your first $1 million in sales has to be founder-led. Don't hire salespeople or other people to go out there and sell for you. You have to sell yourself. Motive and the goal cannot be money. It's got to be something different. You got to be able to change the world in some shape or form, and that's what needs to keep you motivated. We're going to change logistics. When stuff shows up at your house and it shows up in 4 hours or 6 hours or 10 hours, there's a lot of friction in how that happens. And so we're going to change that. That's what we're after.
Welcome to Forging the Future, and I'm sitting down today with Gaurav Khandelwal, CEO of Velostics and chairman of ChaiOne. Gaurav, it's nice to have you on the show today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
We've been passing like ships in the night at some of the Houston events, so I'm happy that we get to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Talk about Houston and innovation and building startups. So you actually have some deep roots in the Houston startup ecosystem. Maybe tell me a little bit about the early days of Houston.
Yeah, I moved here in 2003 from the New York, New Jersey area. My first job was in consulting out of college for a company in Manhattan. And I was just struck immediately by just how humble people were. Maybe if you put them against New Yorkers, it's a little bit different. Started in the entrepreneurship scene, just trying to help run a entrepreneurial meetup. In fact, I met Rakesh Agarwal at one of those meetups back in, must have been 2004 or 5 maybe, him and his wife at Black Lab. There was like I think a coffee shop on Montrose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then in 2008, after just a couple of years of building websites and whatnot, moonlighting during my consulting job, Steve Jobs announces the App Store. So jumped into building apps. Launched ChaiOne, bootstrapped it, and the rest is history.
So you were building mobile apps for the iPhone?
That's right.
Yeah, I was trying to position in order to do that, and we actually did start building some apps, but it was, we did quite a bit of mobile development, but I think you had a little more success than I did in that area.
It was just pure luck. I think because we had no money, our guerrilla marketing was standing outside the Apple Store, the Galleria, and handing out ChaiOne t-shirts.
Oh, really?
And, we were big Apple fanboys. We were only buying Apple MacBooks. And one of the Apple managers was like, who are you guys? And my wife, she started the business with me, and my brother, she was running HR, front desk, marketing, receptionist. She was everything for 6 years. And so she said, we build enterprise apps and they're simple, easy to use. And we got the Houston Rockets from that Galleria Apple Store.
Tell me a little bit about that. The Houston Rocket guy was leaving the App Store, and you said, "Here's a T-shirt."
No. There was the Apple Store manager called and said, "Hey, I've seen you guys hang outside our Apple Store and hand out T-shirts, and whenever a new iPhone comes out, you guys are first in line to buy it, and then you give out donuts to everybody. I mean, you guys are cool. I learned you guys build apps. We actually have a project where." At that time, the GM had called Apple and said, hey, we need to bring Jeremy Lin back to Houston. Remember Linsanity?
Mm-hmm.
And when we bring him back to Houston, need a recommendation for an app developer. And this guy said, hey, I thought of you guys. And so we did. We built an app that Lin loved so much that he, when he signed the contract, he made a comment to Jason Alexander saying, hey, who did this app? This app was awesome.
Wow.
And so then we got a call back from Apple saying, you guys crushed it. Can we come meet with you? And so then their team flew in from Cupertino. And then we talked about how do we tackle the energy business and how do we go after it?
I think that kind of hustle, a lot of startup founders don't really understand, right? I mean, that you didn't have any money. Thought, well, what can we do? Let's hang out outside of Apple.
Yep.
You don't know what's going to happen, right? Maybe they're going to chase you off, right?
Yeah.
Like, get out of here, guys,
right.
But you were making yourself useful, and, they saw that and it worked.
Yeah, you got to go all in.
just for the price of donuts.
Exactly.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
And so then, and that was ChaiOne.
That was ChaiOne. Yeah. So that company, once we had that Apple partnership, grew pretty rapidly. And in that journey, we found that it was difficult to find good talent in Houston. And I think that still is today. People still talk about that. But one of the ways that we wanted to find talent was we wanted to find people that were musicians and math majors. So we never looked at resumes, looked at their backgrounds. And we also wanted people that were leaders in what they did.
I've mentioned before about hiring music majors. That's what IBM did before there were computer science majors, because they were hiring for an aptitude instead of like a skill.
Yeah.
Right. I did the same thing when we opened our office in Belarus. There were no firmware engineers there, but I hired for aptitude and then trained them how to be firmware engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Justin Siegel on the show with Boxer, and he said the same thing, that they really target aptitude instead of hiring for a CV. But you learned that early on. Is that just something that you came across? Or when did you decide, hey, we're not going to hire for experience? Was it because there were no experienced mobile app developers, or what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of factors. One is that we couldn't pay oil and gas salaries. And so resumes meant nothing. We were looking for people that were leaders in their space, so people that have written an app or have talked about it or have spoken about it were people that we really wanted. And then we hired some early developers that we saw that characteristic, that music and math, background. And before you know it, we had like a 5-person band in the company. And these guys were all great developers. They all came from .NET backgrounds, Java backgrounds that were like, we'll never go back to that. We want to be iOS developers. And then that kind of became like one of those cultural things where, hey, to fit in this culture, you have to have great taste for coffee. You have to great taste for food. You have to really have to understand music, right? So it's one of those things where suits just didn't fit, right? As much as people were interested in that space, it was really a team of crafts.
Did you hire specifically for culture, or did you just kind of back in?
No, we that was like very important. And I have to give credit to my wife, Seema, because she really focused on that from the very beginning. It's not like we nailed it every single time, but over time we just learned that this is a culture that automatically accepts their kind or rejects ones that don't fit. And so people that didn't fit, left pretty quickly.
And how big is ChaiOne now?
ChaiOne's now maybe like about 50 people in Houston, and then we have access to a couple hundred in Latin America. So it's all central time zone based, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico.
Still mobile app focused?
No, actually, we've gone much beyond mobile apps. So mobile was definitely a strong foundation, application development in general. The whole digital transformation wave brought in, some new opportunities. But where we really hit our stride was around user experience. And that was all around user research. So this idea that you can build whatever you want. You can build an app, you can build an application, and now you can build all these AI systems and AI applications. The reality is that still 95% of them have suboptimal results. A lot of them fail, never take off. Why? Why is that? Usually, the problem is that you're solving the wrong problem. So most companies will say, I have this SAP process, this lubricant workflow, whatever you name it. It's a 50-step process. I'm going to go and apply some new whiz-bang solution to it without simplifying the process. And so what we found was, and we having come from management consulting, that this idea of a top-down approach involves what's change management, right? You're pushing people to make a behavioral change to adopt a new technology. Our breakthrough was, what if you went bottoms up? You send these behavioral science PhDs into the field. You uncovered their true emotional state and the frustrations they face in their work. And what if you went bottoms up and you said, you know what, instead of this 15-step process, I can do it in 3. And then you build a solution for those 3 steps. And all of a sudden, it wasn't like you needed to change management. We found they were change makers. These people were screaming from rooftops saying, I want that solution. I want that tomorrow. And so that is a catalyst that made us a big differentiator working with the Fortune 50. We were never chasing like to become a $100 million business. What we were chasing was profit. How do we build a sustainable business that, pays for our people, retains them, gives them raises every year, et cetera.
Would you advise startups to focus more on profit than on growth?
Yeah, it's so funny. It just depends on like what's in vogue these days, right? Believe it or not, at that time when the business was doing well, I had many so-called investors come to me saying, "Why are you wasting your life chasing a lifestyle business? You should be building, big tech company." And I was like, "Well, haven't you read Robert Kiyosaki's book on Cash is King or Cash Flow Quadrant? I mean, isn't that what's most important?" And the feedback I got was, "No, you're too short-sighted." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, I just bootstrapped it. What do I know?" But then when I started Velostics, I realized that I couldn't run Velostics within ChaiOne. It would just hemorrhage cash. It's two different outcomes. I need to attract people with two different reasons. For ChaiOne, it was mostly around profit. How do we, give people bonuses and raises and all of the good stuff? But with Velostics, the profile was more around how do you incent them on equity, right?
What led you to make that leap then? I mean, you had your business, you're happy, you're making profit, you've got an environment for your employees, and then like, hey, I think I'll start Velostics.
Yeah, it's like I started when I was 27. So 10 or so years later, it was like, I got to do something,
a little bit of
different.
boredom.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You got to do something different. I've seen a lot of my friends do really well, with tech. And so, like around 2019, started feeling the itch to get into logistics because we were solving these logistics problems over and over again for our customers. And some customers from some companies like Chevron and Philips and others really leaned in and they said, "Hey, we'll back you, we'll support you. Let's go build a cloud-based platform because we do all of this stuff in spreadsheets." And so that's how Velostics was born. And then once we got to cash flow break even, not profitable, but cash flow break even, we said, okay, now it's the time to go raise some capital. So we raised $4.5 million in venture capital.
Okay. And did you raise that here in Houston or did you have to go outside for that?
We had to go outside, and intentionally, I wanted to bring in, capital that was not, Houston based.
Why?
Just because, I've been in the Houston scene long enough to know like how they think about companies, and Blair's a great friend. There's
Blair
a couple
Grew
others.
at
Yeah,
Mercury.
that's right. And Blair is one of those guys that I can always call on and get advice. But I was intentional about going outside, so we found a investor in Kansas City that was interested in the mid-continent thesis, and then we backed that up with other local Houston investors. So we found the lead outside, and then we brought in local Houston investors.
At Softtech, we don't just follow the trends, we set them. As the founder and CEO, I've built a team that excels in delivering cutting-edge solutions in software, hardware, and IoT. From concept to completion, we're the partner that turns your tech dreams into reality. Softtech, where innovation starts. Well, you mentioned how Houston investors feel. How do they feel?
Things maybe have changed a bit. But at least when I was in Han for a few years, looking at the pitches, these companies were restaurant companies, energy companies, services companies,
medical,
tank rentals, medical, pharma, right? Tech was still very, foreign. And the tech companies that were coming in, they were small businesses getting valuations of maybe $5 million, for a Series A. That seemed different, right? And so I'd seen some friends of mine in the Bay Area and what they'd done with their businesses and how big they'd gotten. It was clear that the approach needed to be get an external, VC to come in and then fill the round with, Houston capital.
So it's quite a change to go from bootstrapping your services business, because that's not a hockey stick business usually, right? Same thing with Softtech. It's a great business now, but it takes time to build it.
Right.
How is it different building a VC-backed business?
Like I would tell you, like in hindsight, it's no different.
Mm-hmm.
I think every founder has to really buy into the fact that your first $1 million in sales has to be founder-led. Like don't hire salespeople or other people to go out there and sell for you. You have to sell yourself. The second thing I would say is money can create bad behavior. It can give you this false sense of, Oh, let me try these 5 different things and see what works.
Once you get that venture money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Which is what venture is for, right? It's really for the product market fit. Like you go try different things, but also gives you this false sense of security where, you're doing A/B testing and different metrics and whatnot. I think when you don't have the money, you are much more diligent about where you spend your time, and you will stand outside an Apple store, no matter how long it takes to get customers, right? But with venture money, you start getting a bit more sophisticated. You start thinking about ACV and ARR and CAC and your LTV and your payback ratios. You're not thinking about like, what is the problem the customer really wants me to solve? Can I go to that warehouse and just hang out, for 8 hours every day and see the truck drivers come in, right?
I've seen a lot of startups, founders, they struggle with this because they're like, well, the investors are telling me that I need to go and build my business up to 500K of ARR. And how the heck am I going to do that without any money?
Right.
So is that the approach that you took? Like at what point, you said you were break even, but what was your revenue at the point that you decided to go to get additional venture dollars into the business?
Oh, it's very small. I think it was like maybe $350,000.
Per annual sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, like a 2-person, 3-person,
sure,
company. And so it was intentional.
But then you were able to raise $4.5 million.
Yeah, over 2 rounds.
2 rounds.
Yeah.
The first round, when you were at 350K of sales and a couple of people, what kind of valuation was that at back in 2019?
I think it must have been like a 9 million post.
9 million?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is pretty decent size. And were you able to convince them that there was that TAM, that total addressable market, the potential? Because a lot of VCs, they want to see, a minimum of 500K, right? Maybe even $1 million in sales before they'll write a check.
I don't think there's any rules like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are rules that are just put out there, but I see startups funded all the time with no revenue, that are pre-revenue. It all goes back to the story, to the founding team, to the experience, so, look, we're entrepreneurs, right? We don't believe in rules.
Right.
We
make
break
the
rules. We make the rules. Yeah. Exactly, right. So I think for every story out there that talks about all these metrics and charts and whatnot, there's 15 more stories out there that people did it with nothing.
Mm-hmm. But your advice is, of course, as a founder, you're going to drive that first $1 million in sales.
Absolutely, right? You have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be able to hire a CSO and snap your fingers.
No, because they don't know what to sell, because you don't know what the product market fit is, so unless you're living and breathing that, like with the ChaiOne business, and I'm sure you went through this as well. I mean, there are times when, forget cold sweat, like panic attacks, right? Oh my God, like how am I going to pay payroll? Like 50 people on payroll, how am I going to make this payroll? Like it's in 2 weeks, right? Like you really want something to happen, right? I think every founder has to feel that. Unless they feel that, it's not a real company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely something you feel on occasion. But that's the difference between someone who wants to, Friday is payday.
Right.
An entrepreneur, Friday is like, I got to pay 50 people, right? Or 100 people or 5 people, right? I mean, it's a problem that you have to solve over and over again. So how did you know that you had product market fit with Velostics?
Well, I think the best way to think about product market fit is like when customers come to you with hair on fire, right? Like, oh my God, like I have this huge problem and I need this thing solved. I need this solved right away. And you have that repeatable over and over again, right?
So you saw that with ChaiOne, people were coming to you with that same problem and you're like, well, maybe there's a product here.
Not quite. It wasn't the exact same problem, but if you just like zoom out, the problem was lines of trucks waiting outside facilities.
I see.
And I went to a lot of places around the world and I would see lines of trucks. It's like, why are these trucks here? Because the process of paperwork and appointment scheduling doesn't exist. There's no easy way to get them in and out of there. Labor isn't there. So just lots of constraints. So the way to measure it is really to understand how long are these trucks waiting outside the door. And if they have only 11 hours to drive, these drivers all of a sudden don't have the patience to wait around. So 2 things happen. Either they increase their freight rate and they say, okay, you're running a very suboptimal operation. I have to wait for 3 hours. I'm going to charge you $2,000 for this lane versus somebody else that might say, if you're very optimal, I'll charge you $1,500. And, for companies that spend $1 billion in freight, that's a lot of money, right? It's 25% difference, right?
So there's an ROI there.
Exactly. So if we can make it just smooth as butter, like open table, right, for restaurants, you show up, your table is ready, you go to the table you're assigned to and you're in and out. But if you call them and email them, sometimes it doesn't work, or you just show up, worst case, you wait there for an hour in a popular restaurant. That's the gist of the problem that we started solving. And then we uncovered more opportunity in that workflow, trailer management, yard management, like companies like Amazon, Walmart that have hundreds of thousands of trailers, millions of deliveries per year, growing exponentially. You can't do that with spreadsheets.
So much of the world still runs on spreadsheets.
Exactly.
It actually does. Excel and Google Sheets and things, but it's not efficient. You're right.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like find a spreadsheet process that you can automate and build a business.
Interesting. So you've been an entrepreneur for many, many years now. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs in tech today?
Yeah, I would say that there is a demographic that I'm really interested in that maybe isn't as well recognized, and which is the intrapreneurs. So these are people in large companies that have not taken the entrepreneurial jump, but are no less risk-taking, putting their career on the line on a daily basis. That's who we look for. These are the change agents, the change champions, right? Those people need help. And those people need to be recognized and need to be, surfaced. That's who I was targeting with Start. That's who we target with ChaiOne. That's who we target with Velostics, is we look for people that have a desire, this bug that they want to make things better, but not taking a full jump, right? So that's one. I think for those people, I would encourage them to come out to events, come to the ION, come to various things that Rice is doing, other startup, businesses around town. Definitely want those folks, to be mingling with startups. On the entrepreneurs, I would say, keep the faith, keep your head down, believe in yourself. You can do it, you can make it. Yes, it's not easy. I mean, look, we've been in business for, decades. We're still at times, just grinding, right? And so it just never ends. So the motive and the goal cannot be money. It cannot be some instant gratification. It's got to be something different. You got to be able to change the world in some shape or form. And that's what needs to keep you motivated.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. Of course, success is nice, but I mean, you need that.
It's a byproduct.
Purpose in order to keep, grinding away, like you said, and have the tenacity to, achieve, the goal that you set out to achieve. Yeah.
And I'll just say one more thing, which is don't forget your family. I've just tried to be very intentional with my time. So, before kids, I was working easily 80, 90 hours a week. But time goes by fast. And I think about summers with my daughter and my son and how many are left, and they're 8 and 10. So not that much. And so that time will never come back.
Very important point. I try to bring that up often as well with the founders, especially since I had 5 kids and ran businesses during that whole time. I joke often that I had to start a company just because I had 5 kids. A lot of people are like, well, you can't start a company. I have kids, right? But you do have to be intentional in your time and block off and make sure that you are there for the events and you're there in the evenings and you do your bedtime routines. And then, if you need to go back in the office, you can do it then.
Right.
Well, one last question. How are you forging the future?
We're going to change logistics. We're going to change the way that trucks deliver stuff in the middle mile. So when stuff shows up at your house and it shows up in 4 hours or 6 hours or 10 hours, there's a lot of friction in how that happens. And so we're going to change that. That's what we're after.
Well, I love the fact that you can order things and have it delivered almost the same day. Amazon has been experiencing with that. But it does also seem that it's crazily inefficient because of the number of times they show up at my door. Right. And they're starting to do things like you can group the packages to be delivered on a certain day, but I don't think they're doing enough of that where, they're, you're not having a truck show up 6 times to people's house same day or next day.
Yeah.
But similarly, I'm sure the efficiency of the trucking industry has a ways to go, right? So much wasted energy and people and time and effort. And that's great that you're tackling that. I think that's sorely needed. Well, thanks for coming on. Very interesting topic. I'd love to catch up with you some more outside the podcast because I think we have some shared experiences there. But,
yeah, great. I'm just channeling the inner Chris. I'm wearing, I grew my beard out. I wore my glasses. I wore a white shirt. So I'm just trying to be a little bit like you. You've even got Oura rings.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we are. Well, we're birds of a feather, that's for sure. Well, thanks for coming on today, Gaurav.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before you go, I have something for you. Because, just to complete your Chris look, I have some geek socks for you.
I love it.
Binary socks, if you don't have any.
Yeah, that's great. This is my birthday, 10/1.
Well, it
is binary.
Nice. You have a binary birthday.
Yeah, October 1st.
Perfect.
Yeah,
well,
thank you so much.
And and happy birthday since it wasn't too long ago.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
You got it.
I know how important staying informed is for innovation and growth. The Forging the Future newsletter brings you the best in tech trends, startup advice, and industry insights. Join our community and forge your future with us. Subscribe now.